A dog shot and a life transformed by the hatred of a vindictive neighbor. When the neighbor, a classic Karen, realized the animal's owner was the mother of the local police chief, a power struggle began in the quiet, gated community. Amidst injustices, conspiracies, and surprising revelations, discover how a 67-year-old woman stood up to tyranny and revolutionized an entire community. A story of courage, justice, and the unconditional love that makes us fight. Leave a like and tell us where you're watching from. Just imagine, you spend years tending your garden, transforming that patch of earth into a little private paradise. Every rose planted with care, every tulip hand-picked, years dedicated to creating your own refuge. And then, on a Sunday morning that started perfectly normally, you find your dog, your faithful 10-year-old companion, lying on the lawn, bleeding, wounded by a pellet gunshot. And there, on the other side of the white picket fence that once just represented the division between properties, she stands. The neighbor with the short platinum blonde hair, huge gaudy framed glasses, and a smug little smile on her thin lips, always covered in bright red lipstick. "Your dog was destroying my petunias," she says in that shrill voice, holding the gun as if it were a trophy won in an epic battle. This is how my personal hell began in this gated community that was once peaceful. 3 traits have always defined my personality throughout my 67 years of life: unwavering loyalty, excessive patience that has now finally run out, and fierce determination when it comes to protecting those I love. And now my dog Max is suffering because of a neighbor who thinks she's the absolute queen of the neighborhood, the empress of the sidewalks, the supreme deity of community rules. What this woman with the bleached blonde hair doesn't know, or perhaps she does know and that's exactly why she's doing all this, is that I have a daughter. A daughter who isn't just anyone. A daughter who has just been promoted to police chief. A daughter I raised myself, tooth and nail, after my husband passed away 15 years ago, taken by a sudden heart attack while he was pruning the very fence that separates my house from this hag's house. A daughter who won't be happy at all to learn that her 67-year-old mother and her childhood dog are being terrorized by a suburban despot who probably has nothing better to do than monitor the length of her neighbor's grass. But I don't want to bother my Brenda. She has bigger problems to solve, real crimes, dangerous people to arrest. This is my internal conflict that's eating away at me. How far should I fight my own battles before asking for help? At 67, after facing life alone for so long, do I need to prove that I can still solve my own problems? Or is this just the foolish pride of an old woman who doesn't want to seem fragile in the eyes of the daughter who has always seen her as an indestructible fortress? Max whimpers softly as I carry him to the car. Each little sound he makes is like a knife through my heart. I never thought those first aid classes I took decades ago would be used in my own backyard, stopping the bleeding of my dog. His white fur, which I brushed every morning with such care, is now stained red, and my trembling fingers can barely hold the steering wheel as I drive desperately to the nearest vet clinic. In the rearview mirror, I see the neighbor on the phone, probably already spreading her distorted version of the facts to the other members of the Homeowners Association. How she managed to become president of that group of puppets is still a mystery to me. Probably the same technique she used to win the city council seat. A lethal mix of intimidation, manipulation, and strategically distributed fake smiles. The veterinarian, Dr. Paul, a young man with kind eyes who always treated Max with special affection, assures me he'll be okay, but he'll need special care in the coming weeks. I meticulously note every penny spent on treatment, every medication prescribed, every procedure performed. The bill will be sent to the neighbor, along with a notice for damages. Oh yes, because one thing I learned from my late Anthony is that everything in life must be documented. Carmen, he would always say with his Italian accent that never left him even after 50 years in America, always keep the receipts. Life is one big accountability. And I kept them. All of them. When I return home, emotionally exhausted, I find a notice from the Homeowners Association stuck to the door with overly strong tape, which tears off a piece of paint when I try to remove it. Another damage to add to the list. The notice printed on letterhead with the ridiculous logo the neighbor herself designed, something that looks like a mix of a crown and a poorly drawn house, informs me that my garden is out of compliance with community aesthetic standards, and that I have 15 days to remedy the situation before daily fines begin to be applied. The association president? Guess who? My dear shooting neighbor, Mrs. Veronica Montenegro, now also known as Councilwoman Montenegro, as she insists on being called, even when she goes to the bakery. What she doesn't know, or perhaps she does know and simply doesn't care, is that my family's Italian gardening traditions are centuries old. Every plant has meaning, every arrangement tells a story. The basil isn't just there because it's aromatic, but because it symbolizes fertility and protection of the home. The red roses aren't just beautiful, they represent the love that Anthony and I shared for 4 decades. This garden isn't just decoration or an old lady's hobby, it's my connection to my ancestors, my umbilical cord tied to the roots left across the ocean. A tradition that certainly won't let me be intimidated by a soulless homeowners association led by a woman whose garden is as artificial as her smile. That night, I can't sleep. Max, normally curled up at the foot of my bed, is at the vet clinic, and the house feels eerily empty without his soft snores and the sound of his paws padding down the hallway in the early hours. I lie on the porch looking at the stars and wonder how we got to this point. How did a once friendly community where neighbors exchanged recipes and looked after each other's plants during trips transform into this silent battlefield where every inch out of compliance is a reason for notices and fines? The next morning, as I was manually watering my plants, the automatic irrigation system was deemed visually intrusive by the association 6 months ago. I see Mrs. Teresa, my neighbor across the street, waving discreetly at me. Mrs. Teresa, 75 years old with enviable energy, was the first to welcome me when I moved here over 30 years ago. She crosses the street with her characteristic walk, slightly tilted to the right due to an old fall, but still determined. "I heard about Max," she says, her voice low as if we were sharing a state secret. That woman has finally crossed the line. I discover then that I'm not the only victim of Mrs. Montenegro's tyranny. Other elderly neighbors suffer from her absurd rules and arbitrary fines. Mr. James, 82, had to remove the swing set he had installed for his great-grandchildren because recreational equipment is not permitted in front yards. Mrs. Clare, widowed a few months ago, received a notice because the color of mourning in her curtains, a soft gray, was not in the approved palette by the association. A resistance group naturally forms at Mrs. Teresa's house that same afternoon. Over chamomile tea and cinnamon cookies, she made herself, a recipe the association tried to ban because the aroma interfered with the community's olfactory balance. We plan our defense. There are 5 of us initially. Me, Mrs. Teresa, Mr. James, Mrs. Clare, and Mrs. Margaret. A retired teacher who received a notice for giving private lessons at home, an activity Mrs. Montenegro classified as improper commercial use of residential property. During this first meeting of the Rebel Widows, as we nicknamed ourselves even though not all are widows, but the name sounded good and stuck, news arrives that makes our stomachs sink simultaneously. The tyrannical neighbor has been officially elected to the city council. The news comes via Mrs. Teresa's grandson, a young journalist from the small local newspaper, who takes the phone call and then informs us with a pale face. Now Mrs. Montenegro's power extends beyond the community limits and throughout the city. Our small group enters a momentary panic. "She's going to turn the whole city into a gated community with absurd rules," murmurs Mr. James, his hand trembling slightly as he holds his teacup. "And what are we going to do?" asks Mrs. Clare, her face still marked by recent sadness, but now also by worry. It is Mrs. Margaret, with her teacher's posture that faced generations of problematic students, who replies, "We will do what we have always done when facing tyrants throughout history: document, organize, and resist." The following weeks are intensely busy for our group, which grows rapidly. With each new absurd rule imposed by Councilwoman Montenegro, more residents join the Rebel Widows. Our meetings now have to be held in the local church hall, kindly provided by Father Robert, another who had problems with the association, when he wanted to install a bench on the sidewalk for the elderly to rest on their way to Mass. 3 months after the incident with Max, who finally returned home still recovering, and visibly frightened by any sudden noise, I receive an official letter. It's not just another notice from the association, it's an official eviction order. Apparently my house is not in compliance with the new city codes recently approved. The letter specifically mentions aesthetic inadequacy and continuous landscaping infringements. What a coincidence! And who proposed these new codes? Our newly elected councilwoman, of course. My heart pounds as I read and reread that official document, trying to understand how my house, where I lived for over 3 decades, where I raised my daughter, where I mourned my husband's death, where I planted every flower and bush with my own hands, could now be considered inadequate for the city I helped build. That night, for the first time since Max was injured, I cry. They are not silent, contain tears, like the ones I shed when Anthony died. They are angry sobs of deep indignation that shakes my whole body. Max, still fragile, crawls up to me and rests his head on my lap, his dark eyes fixed on mine, as if to say we're in this together. Finally, I give in and call my daughter. Brenda was always determined ever since she was a child. When she decided to learn something new, she wouldn't give up until she completely mastered it. That's how she became chief of police at 42, breaking all department records. Her voice, when she answers, sounds tired. I tell her everything, from Max being shot to the eviction order, trying to control the tremor in my voice. She listens in silence, and her response surprises me. I can't officially interfere, Mom. I'm under internal investigation for alleged favoritism. Favoritism? You? The most ethical person I know. The words come out before I can stop them. Someone filed a formal complaint right after my promotion, she explains, her voice now lower. They're alleging that my career advancement was a result of political connections, not merit. Who would do that, I ask. But deep down in my stomach, I already feel the answer forming. The complaint is officially anonymous, but she hesitates. But unofficially, the handwriting on the complaint is identical to a request recently made by a newly elected councilwoman, a certain Montenegro. It's as if all the pieces of the puzzle finally fit together. I then discover that the councilwoman filed a complaint against my daughter, alleging abuse of power right after her promotion. Coincidence? Obviously not. Now I understand the real game being played here. It's not about my garden or my dog. It never was. It's an elaborate revenge against my daughter, who years ago, when she was still a rookie officer, ticketed Mrs. Montenegro for speeding in front of the local school. Her ticket, the future councilwoman tried every way to get dismissed, claiming she was providing a service to the community by delivering donations to the school library. This revelation changes everything. I'm not just defending my home, I'm protecting my daughter's career, the reputation she built over years of hard work and dedication. The conflict has become much bigger than I initially imagined. Mom, Brenda says after a long silence, I know you want to protect me. You always have. But this time I need you to let me handle things myself at the department, and trust me when I say be careful. This woman is dangerous. After hanging up, I sit on the porch, the place where Anthony and I so often watched the sunset, planning a future that never came for him. Max settles beside me, his warm body against my leg, a comforting presence in the cold night. I make a decision at that moment. If Mrs. Montenegro wants a war, she'll get one. But it will be a war fought with the weapons I master best: persistence, knowledge, and the strength of a united community. The next morning, our rebel widows have a broader purpose. We are not just fighting for our gardens or pets, we are protecting the future of our city against someone who uses power for personal vendettas. We start attending all the city council meetings, an army of gray hair and bags full of homemade cookies, questioning every proposal from Councilwoman Montenegro with a precision that leaves the other council members impressed. Our group grows even larger, now including young families worried about the new rules that make it impossible for their children to play outdoors, small business owners stifled by absurd regulations, and even some municipal employees who are starting to feel uncomfortable with the direction the city is taking. At the first public meeting we attended en masse, Councilwoman Montenegro nearly choked on her coffee when she saw 20 of us entering, orderly, each with a small notebook to jot down every word spoken. Her face, usually confident and slightly disdainful, contorted into an expression I can only describe as momentary panic. "Do you have something to say, Mrs. Cardozo?" she asks when I raise my hand during the public comment period. "Actually, I do, Councilwoman Montenegro," I reply, my voice firmer than I feel inside. "I would like to know why the new city landscaping code specifically prohibits Mediterranean origin plants in traditional European arrangements, a description that coincidentally applies perfectly to my garden and that of 3 other Italian families in my community." The silence that follows is deafening. The other council members exchange glances, clearly uncomfortable. It's obvious that many of them approved that regulation without actually reading the details. "The city's aesthetic standards," she begins, but I interrupt her. "Do aesthetic standards exist to improve the quality of life for all citizens or to serve the personal preferences of a few individuals in positions of power?" My question hangs in the air like a challenge. That night I receive an anonymous call. A whispering voice, which I would later discover belonged to an administrative employee at City Hall, informs me that Councilwoman Montenegro is furious and has vowed to take down that old Italian woman and her wild garden. 5 months after the initial incident with Max, I discover that the councilwoman plans to remodel the city park, eliminating the area designated for dogs. The park where I meet every morning with other pet owners, where Max is finally recovering, not just physically, but emotionally from the trauma. The park where, for the first time since he was shot, he ran freely again, without fear. This news is the last straw for many residents who had until then observed our battle with cautious neutrality. Now, families with pets, children who love watching dogs play, elderly people who find companionship in daily walks with their pets, everyone joins our cause. We organize a petition that quickly gathers over 2,000 signatures. Mrs. Margaret, with her experience in school organization, creates an impeccable system to verify each signature, ensuring no one can question its authenticity. We formally present the document to the City Council, demanding a specific public hearing about the future of the park. Councilwoman Montenegro tries, unsuccessfully, to postpone the hearing, citing procedural matters. But the momentum is ours, and the public pressure is too great to ignore. The hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks later, and our rebel widows, now in custom purple t-shirts, an idea from Mrs. Clare's graphic designer grandson, meticulously prepare, studying urban regulations, the park's history, and even state law regarding public recreational areas. During this period of intense preparation, I receive a surprise visit. Brenda shows up at my door on a Friday night, out of uniform, looking exhausted but determined. "I shouldn't be here," she says as she quickly enters. "Officially, I'm still recused from anything related to you or the community. But I needed to warn you. The investigation against me is being constantly fed with new fabricated evidence, and there's more. They're going to do a surprise inspection of your house tomorrow. They're looking for anything that can justify the eviction." "How did you know?" I ask, pouring her a strong coffee, just the way she's always liked it since she was a teenager. "I have friends who still trust me at the department. Mom, be careful. This woman is using every resource available to her." The next day, when the city inspectors arrive, accompanied by Councilwoman Montenegro herself, who smiles with that morbid satisfaction that has become her trademark, I am ready. My house is spotless. Every plant in my garden is identified with small educational plaques explaining its cultural and historical significance, a brilliant idea from Mr. James, a retired history teacher, and I have all the original property, documents organized chronologically on a table on the porch. "Please make yourselves at home," I tell the inspectors, offering homemade lemonade that they nervously decline under the councilwoman's watchful eye. My house is open for inspection, just as my heart is open for constructive dialogue about the future of our community. Councilwoman Montenegro rolls her eyes as the inspectors begin their meticulous work. She clearly expected to find a frightened, old woman, not a confident woman surrounded by a binder of organized documents and a dog who, although still with visible marks from the shot, now barks happily at visitors. During this surprise inspection, ordered by the association and personally supervised by the councilwoman, I make a shocking discovery. As the inspectors examine my backyard, I overhear the councilwoman on the phone speaking in a low voice but not low enough. Yes, as soon as we can remove the problematic residents, especially in the eastern sector, property values will skyrocket. We already have interested buyers for at least 3 lots. The shopping center expansion into that area is practically guaranteed. We just need to finalize the eminent domain proceedings. I realized then the full plan. The councilwoman is using privileged information to buy properties that will be valued by the city's new master. A plan she herself is helping to formulate behind the scenes. It's not just a personal vendetta against my daughter. It's an elaborate real estate scheme using public power for private gain. Discreetly, I activate the voice recorder on the cell phone Brenda gave me for emergencies, and this certainly qualifies as one. The councilwoman's voice, openly discussing a real estate speculation scheme, is digitally recorded, an ace up my sleeve that I carefully save for the right moment. Meanwhile, Brenda faces a disciplinary hearing that could cost her career. 6 months after Max was shot, everything seems to be falling apart around us. Councilwoman Montenegro moves forward with her plans, both for the park and for the new urban regulations. The public hearing about the park is constantly postponed due to technical details, and my eviction order remains in effect, although we have managed some postponements through legal appeals prepared by a retired lawyer who joined the rebel widows. It's then, on a rainy afternoon, while looking for old family albums to show Mrs. Clare, who is organizing an exhibition on the community's history as a form of cultural resistance, that I find, among my old house documents, carefully kept by Anthony, something surprising. The original deed for the community dated 1950, with specific clauses preventing changes to the rules without unanimous approval from the original owners or their direct descendants. And guess what? I am the only direct descendant of one of the founders, my father-in-law Joseph Cardozo, still living here. This discovery fills me with renewed energy. I discreetly consult a lawyer specializing in real estate law, Mrs. Margaret's nephew, who works in the city and agrees to help us pro bono after hearing our story. He confirms that document, although old, still has legal validity. The community's founding clauses take precedence over later regulations unless they have been formally revoked, which never happened. Armed with this historical document, carefully restored and notarized, I prepare for the final confrontation. The public hearing about the park is finally scheduled after continuous pressure from the public and some opposition council members who began to see the political potential in supporting our cause. On the day of the hearing, the City Hall auditorium is packed like never before. The rebel widows, now a group of nearly 50 people, occupy the front rows, all in their purple t-shirts, some holding photos of their pets who would be affected by the elimination of the dog area in the park. Families with children, young environmentalists, local business owners. The hall is a mosaic of our city's diversity. Councilwoman Montenegro enters with her usual group of supporters, all with serious expressions and binders full of documents that I imagine contain manipulated statistics and technical arguments to justify the park's remodeling. She briefly looks at me, her usual smile replaced by a tense expression. Something in my posture must have sent a warning. The old Italian woman doesn't look defeated as she should be. After the initial presentations, where city representatives show impressive slides of the new modern park, without any mention of eliminating the dog area, it's time for public comments. As planned, several people come forward, from children who read letters about how they love seeing dogs play in the park, to local veterinarians who explain the importance of spaces for canine socialization. Finally, it's my turn. I walk slowly to the microphone, feeling the weight of each step, the responsibility of the expectations placed upon me. Max should be by my side, his furry body as moral support. But city rules don't allow animals in the chamber, another regulation recently approved under the councilwoman's influence. Good evening, everyone, I begin, my voice surprisingly steady. My name is Carmen Cardozo. I am 67 years old and I have lived in this city for over 3 decades. I am here not just as a dog lover or a passionate gardener, but as a concerned citizen about the direction our community is taking. I pause, looking directly at Councilwoman Montenegro, who fidgets uncomfortably with her papers. Recently, our traditions, our community spaces, and even our homes have been threatened in the name of progress and urban aesthetics. But today, I didn't come just to talk about the park or my garden. I came to talk about ethics, transparency, and the true meaning of public service. The room falls into absolute silence, all eyes fixed on me. A gray-haired woman who in that moment feels the strength of generations of Italian women running through her veins. Before we discuss the future of our park, I would like to bring two important documents to public attention. I take out the certified copy of the original community deed from my bag first. This is the founding document of Rosewood Estates, signed in 1950 by 5 families, including my father-in-law, Joseph Cardozo. In it, there is a specific clause that prevents significant changes to the rules of conduct or aesthetics without the unanimous approval of the original owners or their direct descendants. I hand the document to the city clerk, who examines it with genuine interest. Councilwoman Montenegro stands up abruptly. "That's irrelevant to the discussion about the city park. We are deviating from the topic." The session president, an older man who until then seemed intimidated by the councilwoman, finds his voice. "I believe the citizen has the right to present documents she considers relevant. Please continue, Mrs. Cardozo." "Thank you," I say, now taking a USB drive from my bag. This device contains a recording made during an official inspection at my residence, where Councilwoman Montenegro openly discusses a real estate speculation scheme involving properties that will be affected by the new master plan, a plan she herself is helping to formulate behind the scenes. The councilwoman's face visibly pales. She tries to interrupt again, but now other voices join in, demanding that the recording be heard. The sound technician connects the USB drive to the system, and soon the unmistakable voice of the councilwoman echoes through the hall, discussing strategic property purchases and the removal of problematic residents. When the recording ends, the silence is broken by a murmur that quickly grows in volume. The councilwoman tries to explain that she was just discussing theoretical possibilities, but it's too late. The mask has fallen. A young journalist, whom I recognize as Mrs. Teresa's grandson, quickly approaches, recorder in hand, asking questions about the real estate scheme. Other council members, feeling the wind change direction, begin to visibly distance themselves from their now cornered colleague. It's the perfect moment for my final blow. And now, returning to the original subject of this hearing, our beloved city park, I would like to propose not just the maintenance of the dog area, but its expansion and modernization, making it a model space for coexistence between humans and animals. And I suggest that this project be named Max's Place, in honor not just of my dog, who survived a pellet gunshot fired by someone abusing power, but of all the animals that bring joy and companionship to the citizens of this community. The proposal is met with enthusiastic applause, and the session president, now visibly moved, declares that the suggestion will be formally included in the minutes and brought to a vote at the next council session. Councilwoman Montenegro quickly leaves the hall, surrounded by concerned aides and followed by insistent journalists. Her empire begins to crumble that night. 8 months after the incident with Max, the tide finally turns. The investigation against Brenda is dropped when other officers, inspired by the courage shown at the public hearings, begin to testify about the councilwoman's obsession with persecuting her after that traffic ticket years ago. Brenda is formally reinstated as chief of police, with an official apology from the department. The councilwoman's secret real estate plan is completely exposed, revealed in a series of investigative reports published by the local newspaper, written by Mrs. Teresa's talented journalist grandson, who would later win a regional award for this work. The reports unveil a complex scheme involving not only the councilwoman, but also developers and real estate speculators interested in turning our quiet town into a soulless commercial center. 9 months after the shot that changed our lives, in a twist that even the most optimistic of our allies wouldn't have predicted, Councilwoman Montenegro resigns from office amidst the growing scandal. The Homeowners Association of Rosewood Estates calls new elections, and guess who is elected president? Me, Carmen Cardozo, at a newly turned 68. I become the leader our community needed, not a dictator of arbitrary rules, but a mediator who values both aesthetics and well-being. and individual freedom. My first official action is to propose a new set of guidelines for the community, collectively written by the Rebel Widows, now officially registered as the Community Council of Senior Citizens, which emphasize tolerance, diversity of aesthetic expression, and respect for pets. The document is approved unanimously, with only one abstention: the now empty house of the ex-councilwoman, put up for sale after her hasty move to another city. 10 months after the shot that initially seemed to be just another act of cruelty, in an increasingly insensitive world, I organize a community party in the garden that was once considered out of compliance with aesthetic standards. Families of all ages gather, children run across the lawn, teenagers help seniors serve themselves at the food table, all made by community members, each dish representing a different cultural tradition, and Max, fully recovered, runs from person to person, receiving affection from everyone and distributing generous licks. Brenda arrives at Decimantaisinsup, the party wearing her police chief uniform, a deliberate choice that doesn't go unnoticed. She is visually communicating that power can and should be used to protect, not to oppress. She is greeted with spontaneous applause, and our relationship, once distant due to our occupations and perhaps my stubborn pride of not wanting to appear dependent, has immensely strengthened in this shared battle. The ex-councilwoman Montenegro. We heard she moved to another municipality, where she will likely try to restart her political career. Her last act in our city was to put her house up for sale at an exorbitant price, a final attempt to profit from the property she so defended. As an example of proper aesthetics, to her surprise, the house was collectively purchased by the Rebel Widows through an online fundraiser organized by Mrs. Clare's tech-savvy grandson. The property has been transformed into a community center with a special area for animal-assisted therapy and free sustainable gardening classes for underprivileged children. As I watch the party unfold in my garden, now officially designated as the Community Cultural Botanical Garden, I see Max playing with the children, his scar almost invisible under the fur that has grown back. I see Brenda truly smiling for the first time in months, her shoulders finally free from the weight of injustice. I see my Rebel Widow friends, each contributing in her own way to this new community we are building. Mrs. Teresa with her traditional recipes, Mr. James with his educational stories, Mrs. Margaret organizing an adult literacy program at the new community center. I realized then that that shot was not the end as I thought on that fateful Sunday. It was in fact the beginning of a true community, built not by rigid rules imposed from above, but by real human connections, mutual respect, and a shared desire to create a space where everyone, humans and animals, young and old, traditional and modern, can coexist harmoniously. And what about the pellet gun that nearly took my faithful companion's life? Well, it was recovered during the police investigation, and after the case was closed, Brenda managed to get it released as evidence. Now it's framed on the main wall of our community center, encased in a transparent display, with a simple but powerful plaque that reads, "Sometimes it takes an attack to awaken a revolution." When people visit our community now and see that gun, surrounded by photos of the community's transformation and residents' stories, many ask how we managed to turn something so negative into a symbol of rebirth. My answer is always the same, the words my Anthony used to tell me in difficult times. Carmen, life will hit you many times. What matters is not how many times you fall, but how you get up and what you build from the rubble. And we built something beautiful from the rubble of local tyranny. Something that I hope will inspire other communities to resist, to unite, to fight for what is right, not with violence or hatred, but with determination, solidarity, and the wisdom that only years can bring. I look at Max, his muzzle now partially white with age, and smile. "It was worth it, wasn't it, my old friend?" I whisper as I stroke his ears. His joyful bark is all the answer I need.